Fair use. Fair use. Fair use.
A member of a secret society called Co-Masonry, and author of the book Founding Fathers, Secret Societies.
As with all secret societies, you have levels, and if you're on the lower levels, you don't even know they're upper levels. They don't even tell you. You bump into it by accident, or someone comes along. Now, in Scottish Rite, that's something different, because they know that there's a... But before then, and basically secret societies, such as, let's go to ancient Egypt. To the ancient Egyptians, the priest would tell the serfs, the guys that tilled the land, they would say, the sun is God, okay? And so they accepted that very low-level interpretation, all physical. That's not what the priests believed. What the priests believed...
Pause right there. Notice that image that they showed on the wall, the deity in the front was a female, and she had a sun disk over her head. Just think about this, because I'm going to show you another video. I think it's important.
There's a second level. The priests believe that, no, the physical sun is not the supreme being. It's the spirit which flows through the physical sun that is the supreme deity. However, there was another level, and the priests didn't even know it. It's those that were involved and elevated to if I would have told you this 15 years ago, I might have gotten shot. But this is now, I'm so...
Okay, so as a Freemason, what changed that allows you to openly speak about this and quote unquote, unveil something that would have got you killed,
Glad now that this is easy to talk about. The third level, which is a higher level of understanding, said, nope, it's not. That's not the sun. The sun is not the supreme deity. Nope. Yes, spiritual energies come through the sun. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the star Sirius.
The dog star.
The dog star, because the dog star was everything to the ancient Egyptians.
Sirius is said to have been the most important star in the ancient world. It was considered the brightest star in the heavens, many times brighter than the sun. The Great Pyramid was built to synchronize with Sirius, so that the light of this star would shine into the Queen's chamber, supposedly to cast a beam upon...
Wait, now listen to that too. Whose chamber is it shining into? Not the king's, but the Queen's. Remember that, because I'm going to show you this in the next video, why I think that's important.
An initiate during a ritual.
Sirius is considered to be the dog star. It's considered to be the most evil star in the Egyptian pantheon. And the reason for this is because in ancient Egypt, they depended on the Nile. And during the time when Sirius is in its ascendancy, which is in late July and early August, was the time of drought. It was a time when the Nile was at its most weak in terms of being able to be used for crops. And so the Egyptians thought this was a time of blasted blight, drought, and evil.
It seems strange then that Sirius should be related to the founding of America. According to Masonic author David Oveson, the Declaration of Independence was signed when the sun was in alignment with Sirius in July of 1776. It is, however, appropriate that Sirius should be related to the most Egyptian-styled icon in America's capital city, the Washington Monument. Oveson writes that in 1848, when the cornerstone of the Washington Monument was laid, the sun would have passed over Sirius. He goes on to say that in the course of the ceremonial, the star Sirius would have been seen on the eastern horizon. It would have been rising over the Capitol building to the east of the monument. The monument itself.
He describes how the religion was so ancient that even Muslim Africans couldn't understand it any better than the Europeans could. And he realized how important this was, and he went back to Africa and lived amongst the Dogon people for 15 years trying to understand their religion. And the Dogon religion is very much a mystery religion, and they did not give the information easily to him. They were very evasive about questions, and it wasn't until after they'd had several run-ins with the French authorities that they probably realized they weren't going to be able to practice this religion much longer, and they decided to let Marcel Griol in on these innermost symbols of the religion. And it was taught to him by Olga Tamale, who was blind. He had been one-eyed from childhood, and he became blind later in life as a result of an accident. So he's the one who sat down with Marcel Griol in 1946 and told him these stories that Marcel Griol recorded. And for the most part, Marcel Griol recorded the religion accurately, but one grave error he made was that he identified the Numo as male deities, when in fact they were female deities, and they were symbolized by the sun, which was a female symbol.
So see that? Look at her. All right. You have deities or creatures, right? That their prime symbol is what? The beetle, I believe what she said. But they also are dealing with DNA. This guy missed the point because he didn't know what DNA was at the time. What she call it? It's called the word. It's the DNA helixes. So they're fooling around with DNA. One of their symbols for them is the sun, and that's why I said, look at that Egyptian carved statue, that female deity. She has the sun disk over her head, and that's not the only one we've seen. There was that other one that was supposed to be like the hippo or whatever. They draw her with a sun disk, right? Oh man. So and they, she gives all these excuses why that they would have been considered male. It was to cover up because of the time you lived in. Nobody would read your work if you said there was female goddesses. Give me a break. Give me a break. Here we go.
He lived in a very patriarchal culture, so, it's not surprising that he...
You can't... What? There wasn't queens that ruled during this time? Yeah, I mean, this whole idea that women have just been shut down during this whole entire... it just drives me nuts. It just drives me nuts. Feminism just drives me nuts.
He referred to them as males. It isn't until you get to the end of conversations with Olga Tamale, and at the back there's a table there, and here we have the main characters of the religion, who he identifies as male throughout the book, as being identified as females finally. And the significance of this is great because the earliest religions in the world were matriarchal religions. So this is a matriarchal religion, and it shows how old it is. And by incorrectly identifying the sexes, we lose that, and it's unfortunate because I think other researchers would have, like Maria Gamboudas, for instance, would have been fascinated by this mythology if they'd known about it. So we have this wonderful record, and the most important thing about this is that it was the Dogon were living in an oral culture when it was recorded. And they were still living in this oral culture, and they had never changed. Writing had never become a part of it. So we've got these stories that have been passed on from generation to generation, and it's a wonderful document. In all my years of studying English literature, I've never come across a document with so many symbols in it. There's just layer upon layer of symbolism.
And what do you mean? You made the comment earlier that you were able to see symbols in religious texts, and now you're talking about, symbols as part of this cultural basis. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you look at the written literature, for instance, to give you an example how different the oral culture is from a written culture.
And correct me if this is incorrect. I mean, I don't want to say recently, but fairly recently read the Ramayana, and one of the things that is in there is they talk about, you know, Rama is from this line and this person is from this lineage. But if you don't really understand what the meaning of that lineage is, there's a whole aspect that you lose. So, for example, one of the things that I discovered after reading it was, you know, it talks about the Vanar, who are these monkeys, these half men, they're half man, half god monkeys, you know. But if you didn't know that that was what the...
Sounds familiar? Maybe the A Book of Jashir? Maybe the Tower of Babel? I don't know. Just say it. Sounds familiar to me.
Vanar were, it would just be totally lost in the meaning of the whole story. And you would just think, well, it's this group of guys and not these, you know, monkeys.
That's one of the wonderful things about this religion, is that it was recorded in modern times in a language that we understand. You know, right from a Dogon elder. From a historical perspective, it doesn't get much better than that. I mean, you're not trying to piece together fragments of different things that you happen to discover. And one thing I've noticed about this document is it's held together like a circle, like a you know, it's you've got to have the whole thing to understand all the pieces, if you know what I'm trying to say here, rather than just a fragment of something. So I think we've really we think we're piecing history together when we look back, but what I've learned from what I've done with the Dogon religion is that you can't. It's very difficult to do that, because if you don't have the pieces, like Marcel Griol never understood the Dogon religion because he didn't understand. Like a key symbol of the Dogon religion is the word. And the word is a symbol of DNA. Well, DNA wasn't discovered until 1953, and Marcel Griol died in 1956. So he never really did understand the religion because he didn't understand this one key symbol. And this is such an important part of the whole thing. It's like for me, it was the beginning symbol that got me rolling on the rest of it. And he describes, Ogatameli teaches this symbol as a fibrous skirt, that he describes the pneumo bringing down these 10 fibers to the earth, and they take these 10 fibers and they make it into a what they call a fibrous skirt. And there's one strand for the front and one strand for the back. And Ogatameli describes how these strands are the essence of the pneumo, and they hang in coils. And he talks about broken lines and this, like the words he's describing are familiar pictures of DNA with the helix and the hydrogen bonds, like broken lines in between the two strands. And this was such an important image in the Dogon culture, that masked men would wear these long tendrils hanging down to their feet, even in Marcel Griol's day. And they described this fibrous skirt being placed over the earth's genitalia. And this is the essence of the pneumo that's becoming a part of humanity. And so when they place this fibrous skirt over the earth and create these new beings and create new life, it's the beginning of the word. It's the first word that occurs on earth. And they describe how the earth animals are able to speak as a result of having the pneumo's DNA combined with their DNA. And so you have the symbol of the fiber skirt being associated with the symbol of the word. And Ogatameli explains that to be naked is to be speechless. And of course, we see the same symbol. And some of these images go back to the Neolithic period, which is, 10,200 BC that we're talking. And the pneumo were amphibians, so you see them being associated with frog goddesses in these other ancient cultures. Like in Egyptian, for instance, the Heket is the frog goddess.
Think about all those stories, though, too. The princess and the frog, or the frog that kissed the toad, or whatever and whatnot. You know, I'm not gonna play this whole video because she's just taking way too long to get to the point. But you know, I'll play a little bit more here because she's just gonna go on a list of, you know, goddesses that are described as being a frog. We're gonna look at some pictures, then I'll put this in the description box. I'm still just trying to get to the bottom of that. I think the Dogon and the Hopi Indians of Texas and New Mexico are somehow related. I'm not saying by blood. I'm saying maybe by a swap. Something in my mind makes me think of something like, was it in the Book of Kings where the king came from afar to remove the children of Israel from their land, and he brought in a different people to live in their land, but the animals, the lions, the whatever, would not let them live there. They were all killing them, and they wouldn't bear fruit. So the king had to bring back some Levites to teach them how to live on the land. And I'm wondering if, you know, if something like that had happened. You know, or the other thing in my mind is, are the Dogons your original Egyptians, or one set of the original Egyptians? Because too many of this just sounds too familiar, and too many of this makes, when you hear her explain the Dogon stuff, it makes you think, Egyptians. You know, let's go back to the Freemason video in the beginning. Oh, the Egyptians, they revered the Sirius star, and blah, blah, blah. Well, how did these people, the Dogon, know about the Sirius star, right? How do they know about both of them? Huh? For them not to be important. I mean, you heard him. He said, oh, hey, if this would have been revealed 15 years ago, they would have killed me. You know, slit his throat from ear to ear for telling the truth, right? So how these people, you know, these people that are nomadic, that have been, and if you ever look at the history of the Dogons, they keep getting kicked around in their land in Africa, right? I was watching a video where it showed how they've had to migrate and keep moving to avoid being caught in wars. And it was something, I just couldn't find the verses. But I was reading Exodus. Oh, no, it wasn't Exodus. What was I reading? It was one of the books in the Bible, and it talked about the punishment upon the Egyptians and how they would have their land stripped. No, that's what it was. Lexwell read it, and I went and looked it up myself after that. It was in one of his recent videos. He was reading about how the Egyptians were going to get chased around, and what I believe they're going to be restored in the end, but not to, like, you know, Egyptian, but I mean, they're going to have, they'll be able to stop running and be at rest. But it just made me think, hey, this sounds too much like the Dogon might be, you know, one of these sets of the Egyptians, you know, because I always remember when Lex showed us and taught us that, hey, you know, people like to look at just the black folks and say, oh, you were the Egyptians, you know, but, you know, there was other different, like, Egypt was like a crown that everyone wanted to wear. So they would conquer it so they could wear it and say, no, we're the Egyptians, you know. So, but here, I'll play a little bit more. I want you to see these pictures, though, because it's going to take you back to the Little Mermaid.
And in, you see the Greek goddess Artemis being worshipped as a toad in Italy and Lithuania. And Maria Gimbutas talked about the Sheilas that appear in medieval churches, and they're the frog goddess, and that she says came from the Neolithic period. And so we see the Numo, because they're amphibians, being associated with these other amphibians and
because they're amphibian, that means they came out of the water, not the land. All right, so let's not confuse this. As much as they're making it seem like, oh man, this is so amazing, this is so incredible. You were made from the earth. You were made from the ground. The land is yours, right? Your forefathers know where they're supposed to be. The land was given to them to be in these locations. They're from the sea. They're supposed to always be in the sea. Just saying. There you got maritime law, the law of mother, the law of the water, pirates' laws. You know, and like I said, go back to it. Common law, the law of the land, right? Not being used. Instead, on the land, we use maritime law, the law of the sea, the law of pirates, right? To be a Native American, you got to prove that your mother was Native American, her mother was Native American, her mother was Native American, so many women back. To be a Jew, you got to prove that your grandmother was Jewish, and her grandmother was Jewish, and her grandmother was Jewish, going so many generations back. Funny to be the law of kings, right? You are who your fathers were. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. You see, so on the land, you follow the law of the kings, right? You are who your fathers are. That's including girls, right? You are who your fathers were. right? The law of the sea, the law that makes you, what was it? Basically makes you a wanderer, right? Of all time, all right? Someone without a home. Hey, your way is we are what the mother is. Is this why? Is this where they're getting this from? Is this it?
Earlier cultures, and they also had a.
Oh, come on! So here we go. Look at this. Where have we seen this before, right? Like I said, the New Mexico, Texas, with those hieroglyphs that are on the walls out there. Arizona. That's what I'm saying. I feel like there was a swap. So you see that creature right there. This one right here. You see that all the time on those rocks out there. And have nobody there to explain it to you. Let's see. Let's see. Where's another one? Now look at that. I want to see the one with the DNA. Flying serpent. Who hasn't seen that one, right? And funny, none of them talk about that though. The flying serpent in this stuff. What's his part in it? Like that, I listened to the whole woman's video. She never brought up any serpents. I wonder why. And that's right there. That's what I was talking about. You see, see this? You see that? Look at the Hopi pictures. They do that. They put that same kind of cross or whatever you want to call it, an alien on top of their heads. Just their child up in sackcloth and stuff like that. And you see a lot of that. Look at the pictures. You'll see a lot of them doing black and white. Of the Hopi, that is. Anyways. Me of. I said all that to show that this is what it really reminds me of. Poland, right? One of their queens that they had. The cost of arms for Warsaw, however you pronounce it. Of the Little Mermaid. Yeah. Let's see. Is a red shield? Yeah, obviously. Let's see. Where's the history of this? All right, so here we have history. I'll translate, see if we'll read it.
The first coat of arms of Warsaw depicted a dragon with a male human head, carrying a sword and a shield. The first known usage was on a seal from 1390. This is the oldest existing armed seal of Warsaw, consisting of a round seal bordered with the Latin inscription Sigillium Civitatis Varsoviensis, seal of the city of Warsaw. 2. Gradually the male head and body was replaced with that of a female. And by the end of 16th century, the tail was also changed from that of a dragon to that of a fish. The only remaining parts of the original coat of arms are the sword and shield. Beginning in the early 17th century, Warsaw records associate a sword-wielding mermaid with the city. 3. Since 1622, the Warsaw arms have been rendered as a mermaid with sword and shield in hand, representing Melusina from the river Vistula, Wisła, who in legend led Duke Bolesław II of Masovia, 1262 to 1313, to the appropriate site, a fishing village, and ordered him to found the city. In about 1294, the origin of the legendary figure is not fully known. 4. The city's motto is, appropriately, Contemit Procellas, it defies the storms.
Did you see that though? That's that is changed. Wow. It first depicted it, and you see, and almost keeps in line with what that woman said in that interview earlier, where they thought the Nomu were male, right? And she couldn't take, and that, what was it? When the guy that stayed there with the Dogon and learned from the Dogon what their signs and symbols were, he couldn't take that back to Europe and say, oh, the Dogon are male. I'm sorry, are female. He had to keep on the lie that they were male, right? So I mean, think about that, right? Think about that, and then the whole fact that it switches from a dragon to a fish. That's like evolution going in reverse, right? Oh my goodness, man. So when it's more appropriate for the time, it seems they changed it to what it should have been. Is that what they're saying? If we're going off of what she says is true, that this is all a serpent frog. I can't help it. I didn't mean to hiss like that. A serpent frog. I'm at a loss for word. Religion that had people like this popping up out of there. I mean, come on. This is whole. It's hard not to laugh because it's like this is crazy. That but we understand too. Lexi taught us about SLC 2485. Wow, look at that. Look at that. That's what I was looking for. All right, because in the video, she's going to talk about how these things went around with the waddle. Look at that. That would go around with the waddle. Oh, not that would look at. No, she said they moved like they were slithering. Yeah, that's what it was. That's why people refer to them as serpents. I thought about waddles. Sorry, she said they moved like they were slithering. Well, there's something to it. I mean, they build statues to them out there. What is this? Oh, it's just yeah, nothing there. Well, alrighty then.